Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Greetings and good morning. It is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. My name is Bart Warner. I serve as the town manager of Bedford, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the Best Little Town Podcast, a communications effort that the town of Bedford has put into place with our partners at Media Squatch to provide a recap of the events of recent town council meetings and maybe a little bit more explanation and background of the actions that are taken. Since I'm joining you on a Wednesday morning, that means that we had a meeting on the previous evening. That was last night, July 21st. On an administrative note, we did cancel our meeting on July 7th. That was a decision made by the mayor in conjunction with town staff. Doesn't happen very often, but if there are situations where council has no formal business agenda and there's no demand for action for them to take, this is a council that does not choose to meet just for the sake of meeting. So that's what occurred back on July 7th. Prior to the deadline for putting the agenda together, we realized there really was not any action that required council's attention. So the mayor issued a call to cancel that meeting, and the code says he can do that for a good reason. We always try to be a little more explanatory about that. And I think we said so earlier that the reason in that case was that we just simply did not have any business coming before council that required attention. That said, we did have a little bit more robust agenda last night, and without further ado, I'm going to jump right into that. Of course, the first item of business at every meeting is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, and that would have been from back in June. Shauna Bogus, our recording secretary, was back with us after taking some time off to do some travel, so we appreciate having her back, but we also appreciate the service that the interim person performed there. The minutes from the previous meeting were unanimously approved. Also, one thing to note, Councilman Todd Foreman was not present due to a family obligation that had been previously scheduled, so there were 6 other members of council who were present. Next item on the agenda was my report, the report of the town manager. Did start by noting the weather that passed through town yesterday afternoon. Had some pretty significant rainfall and wind and thunderstorms that caused some issues around town. There were several limbs down in various places, including a very historic tree in Longwood Cemetery that came down and also did some damage that our public works crews are going to have to deal with. Had a couple of random electric outages, but my understanding is our electric crews responded pretty quickly and did their best to restore that service in a timely fashion. So did comment last night that given our drought situation, the rainfall was something of a blessing, but obviously we could do without the damaging aspects of the other parts of the storm. Also gave an update last night on municipal building renovations. We've had some issues with Town Hall itself at 215 East Main Street. That building was constructed in the late 1960s. The electrical system that continues to function is what was originally installed. So we know that's a bit of an issue, and that has shown itself over the years through various issues with our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. We've invested quite a bit of money over 60 plus years in keeping those systems going. We replaced the boiler for the heat system a few years ago. We've continued to have problems with air conditioning, leading to the fact that we had a failure back at the end of June with the very high temperatures that came through the area. The existing system we had just didn't make it as long as we wanted to. We knew that was likely, and council had actually approved $30,000 to rebuild the existing permanent chiller unit. Unfortunately, the parts for that have to be fabricated given the unique nature and age of the system. And Since those parts were not ready, we secured a rental chiller, which is parked in the parking lot next to Town Hall. If you see a big piece of apparatus on a trailer, that is keeping the AC systems going throughout the building as a temporary measure till the parts arrived to fix the chiller. That is scheduled to occur at the end of this month, and once we get that fixed, hopefully that truly does get us fixed for a while, and we can carry forward with air conditioning system that not only provides comfort for citizens and our employees, and customers, but also takes care of our systems. We have one room where most of our information technology equipment and servers are located. That room requires a great deal of air conditioning, and when its system doesn't work, we are in danger of losing the guts and brains of what our systems demand. So that's the main item of concern, but hopefully we have that resolved at the end of August. In the meantime, we have engaged with Thompson and Litton to evaluate the situation. Barry Collier is the project leader for them, and they are currently in the process of developing some design documents to address these issues and hopefully resolve them for the long term. They're in the process of gathering data and figuring out exactly what they're going to propose. Once they do that, they'll confer with us, then they'll put those out to bid, and then they will actually engage somebody to perform that work. So all this is to say that we expect within the next few months, certainly within the year, that we probably will need to shut down our facility at 215 East Main Street to address these issues. Again, we know the electrical system is part of that as well, so the rewiring of the building alone is going to require us to get out of the way and let the folks do that. Don't have a specific time frame for when that overall relocation is going to be necessary. In the meantime, we are proceeding with plans. The failure of the HVAC system did require us to do some temporary relocation this past month, which was kind of a good trial run for the larger operation and the relocation that's going to take place. But in the meantime, also, we have relocated one aspect of our operation, and that is the community development department. So if you need to schedule a permit application or any kind of license offered by that department, or an inspection, or obtain a building permit, those folks are currently housed at 700 Orange Street. That is it's a former dog pound facility, but it's a self-contained area. We determined that department was an operation that could relocate in one place there more efficiently, and we know they're going to have to do that at some point in the future. Again, if our HVAC system isn't resolved, that may become an emergency situation where everybody has to relocate, and we do have plans for that. But community development was willing to move and kind of be the pilot project for all of the relocation. So we apologize for any inconvenience for our customers, but we knew that was coming, and also given the nature of that operation, we thought we could do that, go ahead and make that move and learn what we need to do overall for the larger move to come. And so, again, it's not terribly convenient for them or us either, but it's a learning opportunity. And again, it's kind of a pilot project, and it will be necessary at some point anyway. So that's the rationale behind that move. Again, planning, community development, and the building inspectors are now housed at 700 Orange Street. If you stop by Town Hall, we have a sign on the front door, but we'll still be happy to direct you. So I did conclude my report with that information last night. If you were physically present, you heard it. If you were watching live, we appreciate that. And if you watch the recording on YouTube, you'll see it as well. But that's the background. Next item on the agenda was appearances before council. First person to speak was Mr. Danny Kirby, who is a resident of Watson Place. He shared his concern about the issue of data centers, and shared his concern specifically about the proposed location of those kinds of facilities nearby Bedford. He urged council to talk about the issue and develop a policy, maybe as a possible work session topic, to make sure that we are ahead of that in case those kinds of uses are proposed for town limits. given their impact on the power grid and the water system. I can tell you that that is an issue that we have been monitoring for several years. Being in the electric utility business, we've actually started collecting information about data centers over 10 years ago, and noted that the large facilities around 2015 were sited in areas that had a certain geological profile, given the air conditioning requirements. In fact, about 10 years ago, I went down to North Carolina and visited what I thought was a large one at the time in Polk City, North Carolina, but probably isn't as large as what's being built now. But again, this is an issue that staff has been aware of. We've been collecting information to get ahead of it. There are no plans to locate any type of facility like that within town limits. I can report that. Again, the larger sites consume a great deal of land, and for better or for worse, there just aren't any sites with the kind of acreage associated with that kind of use typically that are zoned for that within the town limits. However, if that changes, we will certainly alert council and alert the public and let you know, so we can have an appropriate public community conversation about that. So all that, I was following up on comments of Mr. Kirby. We certainly appreciate his bringing that to our attention and taking the time out to speak about it. The other speaker last night was Ryan Noble of Bible Truth Tabernacle. He addressed council and shared a passage of scripture from the book of James, chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. Then he also offered a prayer for wisdom and direction for town council and the community, which was greatly received and appreciated. Next on the agenda was council comments, and basically that's where typically go around the dais, and each council member gets an opportunity to comment on anything near and dear to their heart. First was Councilman Jay Ippolito, who thanked those who were physically present for attending the meetings. Next was Councilman Stacey Haley, who also noted the impacts of yesterday afternoon's storms and shared his concern for the community and hoped that everyone was okay. He also extended his congratulations to Councilman Ippolito on his recent business reopening that he operates. Jay had a ribbon cutting earlier this week. He's changed locations, still downtown, for the business that he operates. Vice Mayor Darrell Updike thanked everyone who was in attendance. Councilman Dwight Evans also thanked everyone who was physically present, but also took time to thank those who were viewing via live stream and also the people who look at the YouTube videos and presumably listen to this podcast as well. Councilman Evans also noted that there is a group called Mission Serve that is currently present in town. That's a group that performs home repair for eligible property owners, and it's a really interesting group. Actually, Councilman Foster commented additionally about that. I'll get to his comments in just a second, but Dwight Evans shared his appreciation for the volunteers with that group who are present in town and making improvements to our community. Next, Councilman Dave Foster also expressed his appreciation of the people who were present and spoke a little bit more about Mission Serve. He noted that there are about 8 homes in Bedford that are being worked on. This is a Christian organization that works through churches. Basically, they bring young people, and these are middle school age through high school age, from all over the country. They do projects all over the country, and it's everything from construction of handicapped ramps and some general upkeep of fences and things like that to roof repair. So also, I will note personally, I have worked on a couple of projects with Mission Serve myself in Alabama and Georgia through my group at Bedford Baptist Church, and my children and my wife have as well. So it's just a really interesting and efficient and beneficial program for the communities that receive the work. Councilman Foster also concluded by thanking Public Works for their response to the storm and the fact that we did have some limbs down in various places that were blocking roads and sidewalks. Mayor Stanley concluded the council comments by expressing his appreciation for Public Works and Electric also for their quick response in situations like the storm. And I think his exact comment was, "These are the moments when we appreciate that part of staff the most." CG shared that on July 13th, he attended a ribbon cutting sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce for Tandem Behavioral Health Services, which is located on Dickerson Mill Road. They provide services for people who are confronting and battling addiction. CG shared his view that this is a great addition to the community and they provide a much needed and much appreciated service. That concluded council comments. There were no council committee meetings to report on and no revisions to the agenda. So we moved right on into the portion dealing with public hearings, and we had two scheduled last night. The first was a public hearing for the purpose of considering a request for a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast lodging located at 517 Longwood Avenue in town. The applicants are Rebecca V. Arline and J. Matthew Davidson. Mayor Stanley opened the public hearing, and Mr. Matt Davidson, who is one of the applicants, rose to speak. He noted that this is the home known as the Longwood Inn on Longwood Avenue, right near the corner of Longwood and Westview Avenue. And they plan to operate it in a similar manner as it has been operated previously before the previous owner sold it to Mr. Davidson and Ms. Arline. There were no other comments for this particular public hearing, so that hearing was closed. The second public hearing was to consider a request for a conditional use permit by Tracy B. Travis for a homestay use located at 725 Longwood Avenue. Ms. Travis, as the applicant, rose to speak first, noted that she has experience in working and assisting with other homestays that are active and have been active in the area, including one in town on Boone Drive and another one outside of town limits in Bedford County. Stated that she does not wish to negatively impact the neighbors and has addressed plans to manage guests and events on the property that may take place in conjunction with this use based on the comments she's received. Next speaker was Ms. Kim Snell, who identified herself as a resident of a neighboring property. She stated that she had looked up the regulations for this kind of use within Bedford and also the presence of other Airbnb uses in the community in general. Stated that her findings indicate that there are over 400 opportunities existing for this kind of use for people to stay in that use at their discretion. Stated her concern is not with the applicant or for visitors, but basically the nature of transient lodging being present in an established neighborhood. She also expressed the concern that approval might establish a precedent for future applications. She encouraged council to look at the experience of our neighbors in Franklin County, noted that they have dealt with this issue and have adopted more restrictive regulations in response there. Ms. Snell noted that she spoke with a homeowner where this type of use was present, and that homeowner shared their experience with issues such as increased traffic and also mistakes where visitors might come to the wrong address and then, create some uncomfortable situations. She also noted that there might be some enforcement concerns related to existing standards such as zoning as well as noise and traffic and other items of that nature that may have an impact on neighbors, and shared her view that it is easier to prevent an incompatible land use ahead of time rather than reactively have to deal with enforcement issues. The next speaker was Ms. Terry Foster, who identified herself as another neighbor on Longwood. She stated that she is opposed to the proposed homestay. She's not opposed to Airbnbs in general, noting that she has used them personally. Her experience has mostly been in separate structures from the homeowner space on the premises when the owners have also been present, and shared her view that that seems to prevent a lot of problems that could arise. Shared her view that the introduction of this use is an impediment to an existing neighborhood, and if the owner is not present due to the difference of the use, that also could be an issue. The change in use would disrupt the familiarity and rhythm of the existing neighborhood. She also shared the concern about never knowing who your weekend neighbors will be, and her view that a person's home is their respite and safe place, as well as her view that approval of these kinds of uses compromises single-family character of established neighborhoods, and there needs to be a way to control them. She also shared her view that this may have an impact overall on home ownership and the ability of buyers to enter the market. Those comments were completed. No one else rose to speak, and that public hearing was closed. One thing I'll note is this is kind of an executive summary of the comments made from my own notes last night, so don't mean to speak on behalf of anyone who actually appeared. And for a more precise account of what was said, feel free to go on youtube.com and view the video, and also review the minutes once they are approved and posted. Public hearings having been concluded, we then moved into the new business portion of the meeting. The first item was a resolution to consider approval for the conditional use permit for the bed and breakfast to be located at 517 Longwood Avenue. I read the action form related to that, which basically recounted the Planning Commission's recommendation, which was for approval. The Planning Commission, at their meeting on July 2nd, had recommended approval by unanimous vote of all members present, and no conditions were placed on that approval. Councilman Stacey Haley made a motion to approve the conditional use permit. That was seconded by Councilman Jay Ippolito. Mayor Stanley noted that the Planning Commission had a thorough discussion of the background of the use in general and also at this specific address. Councilman Haley asked about the access to the property, particularly in terms of the traffic that will be coming to and from the driveways on Westview and Longwood. Mr. Davidson, who's the applicant, noted that there would be no change to the existing driveways or the patterns of traffic there. Councilman Dave Foster asked if there would be any events held at the bed and breakfast in conjunction with the use. Mr. Davidson responded that right now they were just focused on the straight up bed and breakfast use. On a roll call vote, the conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 517 Longwood Avenue was unanimously approved 6-0 by all members present. Of course, Councilman Todd Foreman was absent. The next item of new business was the conditional use permit for a homestay at 725 Longwood Avenue. Again, we recounted the recommendation of the Planning Commission, which back on July 2nd had reviewed this and recommended approval with 3 conditions. First condition was that there would be no events held on the property by renters. Second is that the property line should be delineated with at least one sign along the side and rear boundaries. And the third was that the owner should provide a clear explanation of areas on the property that are permitted to be used by guests within the rental listing, the contract, and within the home visually showing permitted areas. Councilman Stacey Haley made a motion to approve the conditional use permit for the homestay, including the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission. That motion was seconded by Vice Mayor Updike, and there was quite a bit of discussion about this one. Councilman Haley again asked about the methods of ingress and egress, and if the existing conditions for that would continue. Ms. Tracy Travis, who's the applicant, confirmed that would be the case. Mayor Stanley asked if Ms. Travis had any concerns about complying with the conditions that were included. Ms. Travis responded that she did not necessarily agree with the conditions, but that she would comply. Councilman Dave Foster shared his concerns about possibly establishing a precedent for introducing this new kind of use in an historic area. Mayor Stanley also noted that he recalled there was a discussion of limiting these kinds of uses when the comprehensive plan was recently rewritten and adopted, and suggested perhaps that the Planning Commission might revisit that and see about further possible regulation. Vice Mayor Updike spoke quite a bit about the Planning Commission discussion. He noted that the concerns expressed in the public hearing were certainly valid, but he thinks those could be addressed as they arise. If there are repeat issues requiring enforcement by the police department, those will be documented and reported and can then be shared with council and staff, and also the Planning Commission as part of their duties. Darrell did state that his personal view is that he shies away from government intervention into property use in most cases. Councilman Jay Ippolito asked for confirmation as to whether or not the owner would be present when the property is rented, and Ms. Travis indicated that that was not the case as the conditional use permit is proposed. Councilman Dave Foster and Vice Mayor Updike had differing views on that. Councilman Foster shared his view that he prefers, as a consumer, using these kinds of Airbnbs and homestays on properties where the owner is present. Vice Mayor Updike shared his contrary opinion that, in his view, he prefers to rent whole properties without having the owner present. Ultimately, the conditional use permit was approved with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission by a vote of 4-2. Councilman Dwight Evans, Councilman Stacey Haley, Mayor C.G. Stanley, and Vice Mayor Darrell Updike voted in favor of the conditional use permit. Councilman Dave Foster and Councilman Jay Ippolito voted against. So the motion passed with 4 members in favor, 2 against, and 1 member absent. Next item of new business dealt with a contract assignment for the Bedford Otter Bus service. Basically, the Bedford Otter Bus, which is a free transit service that operates within town, has been operated for several years by RideSource through funding provided by the Commonwealth of Virginia. That funding has recently shifted to the Federal Transportation Administration. And also, RideSource is in negotiations with another vendor who is looking to take over that operation. The contract between the town and RideSource basically requires them to get permission for such a transfer of operation or ownership to take place. And so that was the item before council last night. Last night, the town council was requested to authorize the town manager to sign documents related to assignment of the Bedford Otter Bus operation contract from RideSource to Virginia Regional Transit, with review and concurrence by the town attorney. Prior to a motion being made, town attorney Mike Lockaby explained that RideSource and Virginia Regional Transit has raised the issue basically relative to RideSource's continuing responsibilities. The way the contract was written stated that RideSource could not unilaterally assign responsibility for the service to another entity without town approval. As part of the request for that assignment, they are also requesting release of future liability as part of the action. Councilman Dwight Evans made a motion to make the appropriate authorization with those conditions that I just described. That was seconded by Vice Mayor Updike. That motion was unanimously approved by all members present by a vote of 6-0. Next item of new business relates to a bank franchise refund to Bedford County. The town of Bedford has historically been receiving both filings and payments from First Bank and Trust Company. The bank does have a branch located in the town of Bedford, but county staff identified that the location in town does not hold or accept bank deposits. Based on this information, the bank would not file bank franchise tax to the town of Bedford, but would be subject to other local taxes. The Commissioner of the Revenue conferred with the state on this matter, and the town was sent documentation that the bank will be required to refile taxes for 2025 and 2026. But the returns process for 2022 through 2024 would not require forms to be refiled, as this was handled through a paper process. The refund request for 2025 will be brought to town council after a new return has been filed with the state and received by both the town and county. County has requested the town to consider this matter and process a refund for the bank franchise taxes received that belong to the county. Going to let the train go by briefly before I proceed. The total amount of taxes that the town received from 2022 through 2024 was $266,777.67. We're also aware of the 2025 refund will be over $100,000. So the immediate refund that will be necessary is that $266,000 amount, but ultimately the total amount, including 2025, will be about $385,000. Last night, Town Council was requested to approve a refund to Bedford County for the 2022 through 2024 payments received by the town of Bedford. Motion to approve was made by Councilman Dave Foster, seconded by Councilman Dwight Evans. Town Finance Director Ann Cantrell provided some more background information, explained that banks within town that accept deposits have to file and pay this tax. And it was her understanding that First Bank is here but has no local deposits, and they have been filing incorrectly. Unfortunately, their error means that we have to respond accordingly, and we have to return the revenues to the appropriate source. Mayor Stanley asked if that payment had to be made by lump sum or if we could break it into payments. Ms. Cantrell responded that it would be recorded as an accounting liability regardless. So in that aspect, we will reflect the impact on our books anyway, and therefore there's really no value in breaking it up. She did remind council that we presently do have $4.2 million in our reserves and general fund. That's our unrestricted net assets. So as much as we may find this whole issue unpalatable, it's not something that is going to present a huge burden from a financial perspective. Councilman Stacey Haley asked if there could be any assurance that this will not happen again. Ms. Cantrell advised that she had contacted First Bank and Trust specifically to talk to them about it, that the CEO of the bank had been very apologetic, particularly about the income to us, and that staff is following up on all banks within town to assess the situation and ensure that we hopefully don't find ourselves in this kind of situation again. The motion to approve the refunds for 2022 through 2024 was unanimously approved by a 6-0 vote. Councilman Todd Foreman was absent. Next item of new business was a budget amendment for the AARP Community Challenge Grant for 2026. Council previously voted on June 16th to accept the grant from AARP in the amount of $10,926. Given the late term of that regarding our fiscal year, we determined that it would be best to carry that forward with a budget amendment for fiscal year 27, and that's basically what we asked council to do. Council was requested to approve a budget amendment appropriating budget to general ledger accounts, both revenues and expenditures, in the amount of $10,926 to accept the AARP Community Challenge Grant. That motion to approve was made by Councilman Stacey Haley, seconded by Councilman Dave Foster, and unanimously approved on a 6-0 vote by all members present. The next item was a budget amendment for the Otterbus grant for 2026. Hey, there's my phone, which I'm not answering right now. Sorry for the distraction, folks. On June 16th, Town Council adopted a resolution to accept an operating grant for the Otterbus using Federal Transit Administration 5311 operations funds. Again, the timing of that was pretty close to the end of our fiscal year, so we decided to defer the official action to fiscal year 27, and last night council was requested to approve budget amendments to appropriate the funds in the appropriate revenue and expenditure line items totaling $258,714 for the grant to operate the Otterbus service. Motion to approve was made by Councilman Stacey Haley, seconded by Councilman Jay Ippolito, and unanimously approved 6-0 by all members present. Next item of new business was an intent to award a contract for services related to conservation easement advisory services. The town of Bedford owns several properties that are being reviewed by town council for several potential purposes, including the applicability of available conservation programs. In order to identify and maximize the benefits of such programs, town council authorized release of a request for proposals at its regular meeting on May 5th, designed to obtain expert assistance and advisement services. That request for proposals was published on June 5th. 3 firms responded: Conservation Partners, MLA Valuation and Advisory, and Reese Conservation Consultants. The responses were evaluated and ranked by the town manager, finance director, and public works director based on the criteria established by the RFP. Conservation Partners emerged as the highest ranked bidder under the terms of the RFP. Last night, town council was requested to formally approve its intent to award a contract to Conservation Partners for advisory services related to conservation easements and other available programs. Mayor Stanley asked for a little bit of an explanation as to the background behind this and how it could possibly be applied. And we noted that the contract is intended to apply to all town properties, that there are properties that may qualify for conservation easements that could generate revenues for the town. And that includes things ranging from the property adjacent to Stony Creek Reservoir to our existing parks, such as Liberty Lake Park and the walking trail there. So the services to be provided by conservation partners would be to evaluate all properties and come back with recommendations as to what could be done. The way the contract is structured, conservation partners will only be paid in the event that there is an identified easement that could be pursued and that would generate revenue to the town. In situations where they do evaluation and nothing pans out, we don't have to pay them. If there is something that they recommend that would have value and the town council does not pursue that, we would pay them a commission on the percentage based on the value of that proposed easement. Councilman Dave Foster shared his view that Conservation Partners appeared to be a very consistent and competent bidder, and he was impressed by their qualifications. Councilman Stacey Haley asked if this was purely advisory and whether or not there would be any commitment on behalf of town council based on the recommendations. Staff confirmed that this is the case, that this firm is being hired to evaluate things and make recommendations, and the only commitments we were making, again, relate to the compensation structure I just mentioned. Town Attorney Mike Lockaby noted that if we did pursue anything, including a conservation easement, that would require a public hearing at a minimum. So, again, by engaging with this company, we are not making commitments to take any action on any specific property, but at the relatively low risk of financial liability, we think it makes sense to bring these folks on to provide their expert services and give us some guidance on what would be possible. The motion to formally approve the intent to award the contract to Conservation Partners was unanimous. Motion was made by Councilman Dave Foster, seconded by Vice Mayor Updike. And again, on a 6-0 unanimous vote of those present, that intent to award the contract was approved. Final item of business from last night was the Town of Bedford's Equal Opportunity Employer Statement. Our written position on equal opportunity has to be updated on a regular basis. We typically do that annually. When approved by Town Council, the signed statement is posted on the town's legal posting board in the municipal building. Legal counsel has reviewed and approved the updated Equal Opportunity Statement for 2027. Last night, Town Council was requested to approve it. On a motion by Councilman Dave Foster, seconded by Councilman Stacey Haley, the vote was unanimous, 6-0 in favor of approving the written statement. And of course, Councilman Todd Foreman was absent. And with that action taken, there was no further action listed on the regular meeting agenda last night, and the meeting was therefore adjourned. Again, just a reminder, council meets on the first and third Tuesdays of each month at 7 p.m. at 215 East Main Street currently. That may change later if we have to move as a result of renovations, but we will publicize that to the greatest possible extent. We welcome you to be physically present on those days. Our next meeting is August 4th, but if you can't join us in person, those are live streamed by our partners here at Media Squatch. Also, we do post the recordings on YouTube and keep those up there, and we also post the minutes of the meetings once they are approved to our website. One thing to note is that the minutes themselves are in draft form until such time as they are approved by council. So although we met last night, the minutes have not been formally approved until the next meeting. So would encourage you to view the meeting on the video and make use of those other means as well. And if you've listened to me talk for this long, I thank you for joining me and for making use of this particular effort at communication. Hope you will be able to join us again next time. We expect to join you after the August 4th meeting. And until then, I hope that everyone experiences good health, good fortune, and good weather.